He's trying to overthrow the government. I think you'll be okay.
Yes, hypothetically.
Yeah. All right, so you have a passage now. You have a character and you have a symbol. So you are totally ready to write a thesis statement. So let me show you my example thesis statement. I looked at page 13 of the book. And I was thinking about Piggy as a example of the superego. Let's see where on the board. When they see me, I do it on this side. And I wrote through the character of Piggy. It is with a Y, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And his symbolic glasses. Lord of the Flies, which I want to put in MLA. Let's start practicing that when we write so that on the AP test you remember to just underline novel titles. Lord of the Flies suggests that the rationality and guilt one thing by humanity, let's say by civilization, merely, that says merely, thin veneer of violent and impulsive desires of the human heart. It says impulsive. All right, there's my thesis statement. So what I've got here is a complex theme that I think this novel supports. I also think it supports the opposite, so that's kind of fun. But I think this novel supports this theme. And then I have the two literary strategies that I think it uses to support this theme. So I think Piggy and Piggy's, the symbol of Piggy's glasses help support this theme. So at the top of your line piece of paper, write down a thesis statement now about your character and your symbol. And your then theme.
Yes. The best.
There are two ways that seem like good ideas for how to break it up in my different paragraphs, right? So like I might look at the literary strategies and think about how to break up the paper according to literary strategies. If I were to do that, I would have this thesis statement, and then I would have a paragraph that explains how the character of Piggy proves my theme, and I have a paragraph about how the glasses prove my theme. And that would be kind of a traditional 5-paragraph format. A lot of times in that 5-paragraph format, they'll tell you to break it up by the literary strategies that you're looking at, right? It does work as a structure, but as I've argued for this whole year and last year, it would work way better to break it up by theme. Because if I can prove my entire theme and how Piggy fits into that theme in one paragraph, it's not a good theme. Your theme should be complex enough that it's going to take a little time to fully explain it and to fully prove that this is the theme of the novel, right? So instead of breaking it up by literary strategy, I am going to break it up according to my theme. And the way you've written your theme probably already gives you a logical structure to that paper. Because usually when you write a thesis statement, you're like you're almost subconsciously trying to convince somebody of that point. And so you've already thought through what would be logical to come first, second, and third as you write that theme. And you might be switching things around as you look at it. But when I look at this, I see that the very first thing I need to talk about is rationality imposed by civilization. So over here, I'm going to say rationality is, let's say civilization is rational. There we go. That's my first point. And then I look over here and the next thing I've got is guilt. So that makes sense because civilization says, hey, we are formed on a kind of rational system. That means that people are kind of prone to feeling guilty in that civilization. So I'm going to say civilization promotes guilt. Then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to look next and I say, oh, it's merely thin veneer because we are actually violent. Okay, but they're actually violent. And we are impulsive. I could think as I'm writing, I might decide to combine these two paragraphs together because it would make a lot of sense to present both of those ideas at once, but I'll think about it as I'm writing. And then my fifth point then needs to be about this thin veneer. So I'm going to say, civilization is not, does not mirror. I just realized I want to put these in a different order. The human heart. Should be phrased. I'm gonna actually go over here. But civilization doesn't mirror the human heart because we are actually violent and impulsive. Those are the orders of my paragraphs. I know we've done this before, right? Ordering the paragraphs according to theme. Okay, cool. We're getting into that part of the year where we're just reviewing everything we've talked about before. So I want you guys to take about 5 minutes to start ordering your ideas. Just using really basic bullet points like this. What needs to come first, what's going to come second, etc. And as you're doing that, if you have questions, call me over. I'll take a look and help you out. Yes? No, no, just as much as necessary to prove the theme. All right, cool. So the first point, the first paragraph that I needed to prove was that civilization is a rational system, or at least it tries to be. So my topic sentence says the civilization the boys have left behind is one governed by rationality. And I say it's a world of school, government, and patriarchal familial lines. Even though it is a world in the midst of violence by nature and irrational acts, the violence is regulated through the rational rules of warfare. So this part right here is just explaining what I meant by my topic sentence. Sometimes I'm seeing that you're jumping right into the quotations without this little explanation of what your argument actually is, and it's a little bit disorienting. So we have the topic sentence, we explain what we mean by the topic sentence, and then we start to get into all of the close reading. So in here I say Piggy with his Asmar and Auntie represents the rationality imposed by humanity. Though his ideas are not always practical to his situation, he's insistent that a community organized by rules will be successful. One of the first things Golding introduces about Piggy is that he is committed to the rules imposed by his auntie, the woman who raised him in the absence of his parents. His aunt didn't allow him to swim or participate in any physical activity because Piggy has asthma. So what I've done here is I've mostly paraphrased, right? But the things that I really want to focus, I want to focus on how there are rules for Piggy that he very much wants to follow. I want to focus on this idea of Asmar because it's fun to write ass. No, because it's like a way that like he doesn't even, nobody really fully understands it, but they're going to follow the rule anyway. It's kind of arbitrary, and then they turn it into a curse word. And I want to talk about auntie because there is something even less masculine about auntie than mom. Right? Like a mother figure is like, everybody has one. The mother figure can be responsible for like running a household, you know, and so on. But an auntie is like, just feels weak to all these boys. I think calling it, making sure that it's an auntie is important here. Okay, so then I'm going to go on, I'm going to say, so I've kind of like picked out this little phrase to show that this is him committed to the rules. And then I say, perhaps recognizing the physical demands of their new setting, Ralph responds to this information by saying, sucks to your Asmar. He mocks the restriction in a dismissive way, then refigures the physical ailment as a crude insult when he calls it Asmar, suggesting that not only do the rules not apply in their new setting, but that it would be ridiculous to continue to act according to the rules of society. So in this section, I am trying to explain this idea of society being rational by using this quote, sucks to your Asmar, and then breaking it down and saying how it helps to prove my topic sentence. And then I say, but Piggy merely bore this with a sort of humble patience, as though taking a higher, more civilized approach. Piggy's rules might serve him appropriately in the society he comes from, but the book continues to mock his approach, this time through Piggy's brag about his aunt giving him as many candies as they liked. Piggy's indulgence in sweets demonstrates the way that society does not impose rules in order to preserve physical safety, but rather to satisfy desires in a way that they arbitrarily deem socially appropriate. I think if I were to rewrite this paragraph, I think I would need to focus more about how it's arbitrary, but it is still like a rational system. So I don't think I fully get to my topic sentence in this, but I'm trying. And I've broken down the quotations in a way that continually offers analysis. Isn't just about evidence. It's like, how does this evidence help to prove the point I'm trying to make? All right, any questions about this paragraph? Last class, they were telling me it felt too informal. What do you guys think about? They were criticizing my work. What do you guys think about the level of formality here? Okay, I will. I will do that. King Luke has spoken. I think like sometimes, and I don't think that this is necessarily the case in this class, but sometimes we feel like we have to write on a higher register because we're writing about literature, but that's not necessarily the case. Like you don't want to use slang. You don't want to use like, I don't know, what's a new slang word? Y'all, yeah, you probably don't want to use y'all. You don't want to use yeet in your paragraph. Oh, that one's so old though. The only ones I can think of that are current are like crude. No cap. You don't want to put no cap in here somewhere. So there is that level of formality, but first and foremost, you want to be readable. So if you're just adding a bunch of words in because you're like, I got to speak in my academic voice, then there isn't really a purpose for that. So you're right. I'm going to give the rest of the class, I'm going to give my other class Fs. I'm kidding. No, they had really good points, and I actually changed one thing that did feel a little informal. So, okay. I just used the word we right here instead of saying one of the first things Golding introduces is I said one of the first things we are introduced to, which is fine, but it was in passive voice, so they were right. Okay, anyway, so now I want you guys to write your first body paragraph. You have the outline written down, right? And you're going to try and follow this kind of paragraph format. Now, again, it doesn't have to be this long, but you're going for topic sentence, explanation of topic sentence, and then the majority of your paragraph is picking apart your evidence and using short quotations to prove your topic sentence. All right, give it a try. Call me over if you want some help. Sorry, I hope that didn't record. No, I'm probably good. Oh well. Hi guys. So for you guys working at home, you're going to do all of this stuff in a Google Doc that we've been doing with the thesis and the little outline, very basic outline, and then you're going to write this body paragraph.
When you tell them not to do something, they always go, well, now I'm gonna. And especially when there aren't as much like pushback, that's when they jump on the opportunity to do things like that. An example of this is kids who went through the DARE program are more likely to do drugs. Which it's funny, but
were they more likely? I just
They
thought
were
it
more
was
likely.
less.
Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't less.
That's actually.
That's interesting because
Yeah.
they introduced us to all the drugs.
Yeah, and that's
right?
the
Like,
thing.
wow, look at all
Actually
these.
crazy.
There's so many options.
It wasn't by much, but they were slightly more likely.
Okay, so then in that
God
case,
bless
then
America.
the innate quality would be the desire to rebel, almost
Yeah.
like someone's individuality and desire to rebel. It's not that they need to rebel violently, but that society by controlling the violence, that's the way the rebellion comes out.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's apply that to Lord of the Flies. When does the violence start coming out in Lord of the Flies, and how does that fit with Cade's theory here?
Almost like near
Chapter 3.
Yeah.
It happens pretty quickly. The first big one, I think, is Piggy getting punched. Jack punches Piggy in the stomach. I don't know where it is. If someone finds it, we'll come back to it.
Yeah.
But I think, what?
When did Jack promise to like never be afraid of killing again?
Oh yeah.
Like it isn't a violent action, but I think it's kind of like a point where it's like, oh no. I
It's
see
when
what kind
Jack,
of
it's when
this is
Ralph
supposed
is
to
like, why do you get to pick?
Yeah.
Son.
Yeah, it was.
I remember that because it's like this 13-year-old kid being like, I will never be
What is it? Page 71, thank you. It's right there. Yeah, this is when he punches pig in the stomach. So Piggy began again, you didn't ought to have let that fire out. You said you'd keep the smoke going. So as a sign of society, like fire is like the ultimate sign of civilization in this book, I think. It's like the promise of civilization. If we keep this fire going, the smoke will get us back to civilization. But it is also like, you know, it's one of the first signs that human beings were going to become civilized, right? Was the building of fire. So here it says, so he's like, we have to abide by these rules, right? This from Piggy and the wails of agreement from some of the hunter drove Jack to violence. The bolting look came into his blue eyes. He took a step and able at last to hit someone, stuck his fist into Piggy's stomach. Piggy sat down with a grunt. Jack stood over him. His voice was vicious with humiliation. And I think this passage is really good. I'm glad you found it, Grace, because I think this is really good for illustrating kind of both sides of this argument. On the one side, it looks like he is responding to Piggy's restrictions by Piggy being like, you had to do this. This was your job. Why didn't you do this thing? Bam, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm going to like rebel against this idea. And yet the way that Golding writes it, it says, he says, the bolting look, he took a step back and able at last to hit someone. So that sentence sounds like he always wanted to hit someone. And this has given him sort of like the excuse to actually do it. Keaton?
It isn't at all related, and I know this wasn't what Golding was intending, but when he said Abel at last, I could only think of like Cain and Abel, the story of the first ever murder, which, yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if it was intentional either.
Yeah.
Let's forget about the intentional part, as English
Yeah.
teachers are
Yeah.
I like
That's
that
most of
connection.
my essays anyway. This isn't intentional, but it's cool, so.
I really like that connection because here you have two people who are supposed to be cooperating and somebody acts out really aggressively in a way that I think like the Cain and Abel story, I think it fits into this allegory quite well. And when you think of like the Lord of the Flies, the pig is like a sign of Satan, which is what we'll talk about next time. Like it kind of fits there with that allegory.
Yeah.
Olivia, you were going to say something before. Let's end with that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say my opinion.
Yeah.
I think it's more so like their innate nature, because it's like, I think especially because you don't know much about like, this book doesn't really focus on their lives and like their society before they went to the island, you know? And I don't really, because like Jack and the hunters are also violent, but I don't think them being like fire boys would like be their villain origin story.
Right. Right.
I mean, I don't know much about it, but like I think that being on the island and kind of succumbing to nature was what made them so violent.
Good.
Because I think if it's a product of their society, them going to the island wouldn't really like change what they did. I think if they were going to be violent because of society, they would have still been. And I mean, that still could be a thing that happens because, you know, it's huge focus on the island, really. But it's like, this is something that draws that nature out. And it's not only that, but a lot of them become pretty violent.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's just this overarching factor that it's the island and that it's nature and that it's them not having society's influence on them anymore.
Right.
That they can do what they want.
Yes, and I think there's really good evidence for that point. If you look right on page 10, it gets this description of nature that fits with what Olivia is saying. It says, he leapt back on the terrace, pulled off his shirt, and stood there among the skull-like coconuts with green shadows from the palms and the forest sliding over his skin. He undid the snake clasp of his belt, lugged off his shortened pants, and stood there naked, looking at the dazzling beach and the water. So it's like nature itself contains skulls, and it's the forest slides over his skin, almost like a snake, right? Which goes back to the kind of like Adam and Eve story. And he's going to like expose himself completely to the elements and sort of become one with nature, which suggests it's this kind of innate quality. But then at the end of the book, you've got this guy showing up, and who is their hero? It's a member of it's like the Navy, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a member of the military comes up and kind of like says like, here's society and we found a way to like make you even more violent. I don't know.
Yeah, because at the same time, it's like, wow, society's back. They're wearing beautiful clothes. That guy's carrying an automatic weapon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that might just be an extension of our innate nature, or it might be. So anyway, we're gonna come back to this question next time. Let's give me your paragraphs and your beautiful pictures, which I will frame.
You don't want this?
Also, did you grade my paragraph? Thing? Yeah, you're too nice. Meaner criticisms.
Why didn't you get yours to Luke?
Yeah.
I couldn't,
Oh, yeah, Sean.
because we were in the same group.
All right, let's leave it
About
as
like
really quick before you
members.
go.
He's the kind God.
My friend just sent me, it's a miracle I had the willpower to get out of bed today. Yeah.
Will you
Understandable.
get this stuff to the person on?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
You're in this one, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Wait, that one.
Uh-oh, wait.
Yeah, that one.
Thanks, Sophia. Oh, didn't clean it.
The resistance.
Thank you, Grace.
Truly the next Kelly of our times.